Now, Huples Cat, Preparedness Veteran did an after-action report on COVID-19 in the first phase. Both him and Costa don't at all think it's over, but they're looking at what went right in the first few months and what went wrong and what they can learn from it, building upon their strengths and weaknesses as they approached COVID-19 that came out of the blue in January 2020. And that's an absolutely excellent idea. Now, neither did tag me, but I'm jumping into the tag because I'm going to try and push it into North America as fast as I can.
God bless you all. Thank God for the grace. Every day's a bonus. And today's video is actually a tag video. I was tagged recently by Preparedness Veteran. Fantastic small little series that he's done recently, and it's to do with AAR, After Action Review, which I think is really important for us to be doing. And as PV always says, always train, keep training, always learning, always training, always keeping fit. So yeah, I really like this subject. Very, very important to see what you succeeded in and what you failed in. So important to go over your stuff, go over your plans, go over the details. Very, very important. And now we have a kind of a bit of a window. We can move about a bit more. It's a really good time now to get ourselves prepped up, fill in those holes, and really think about what you're doing, what you plan to be doing, and what might happen along the way.
I think it's a really important tag. The after action report has been used by the military for years, has been used by emergency planning for years. I'm used to using it at work. It's what happened, what you expected to happen, what went right, what went wrong, what learning can you take from it? Because even if it went right, was that the actual best way of dealing with the incident? Not always. So that's really important. And I think it's really key to have a look at what after action hours reporting is. It's basically 4 major points. So Prepared Veteran was actually looking for 3 major ideas, and obviously Costa gave you more. I'm going to give you, I think, 4. I'm going to limit this to major things that went wrong, because I think it's more important than to dwell on what went right.
Okay, so following on from my last video, which was all about a set of COVID after action review points, I thought I'd start a collective of information going, or lessons learned from around the prepper community. We've all now been under a cloud of this current pandemic for a number of months now, so we should all have a good idea as to our failings, our lack of preparedness, or our successes. Some of us were caught off guard, and some of us were well prepared for the event. For me, the global pandemic was a generic threat which was going to happen at some point anyway. The question was just timing.
The major thing that went wrong for me, for my planning, now I am a registered nurse, I work in a hospital, I have access to a lot of modern equipment, and I've studied preparedness and I've studied pandemic preparedness in detail for years. I did a series in 2019, very much like the first phase of what we're going through now. What took me completely by surprise was just how fast my workplace, my employer, ran out of decent PPE, and just how fast they started telling us to use bad PPE. That was a huge shock. If I'd have gone into this from a position of zero supplies, I would have had a real hard time. Now, nice people out there like Mary and Anastasia have actually sent me some N95s, which I'm eternally grateful for. It's really different from going shopping in a pandemic than going into an ICU room to examine a patient or to examine equipment in the room, knowing they actually have COVID-19 and are on life support. It's an entirely different thing in your head. But one of the major learnings was my employer ran out of stuff very quickly. Now, whereas I'd like to blame my employer, pretty much all the employers in the economically capitalist world ran out of equipment very, very fast, and so they did in China as well. The difference between the two cultures is that they've been able to replace them in China using substandard equipment really fast, whereas we're still trying to get equipment that's actually to our standards but not able to do it, so we're being forced to use substandard equipment. Very early on I actually went and got myself some N95s. This is my original N95, and what I do is I wear them and I take them off carefully and I put them in a plastic box for a week in sunlight, and then I bake them at 170 Fahrenheit. And is this as good as a brand new one? No. Different makes, different types. No, it's not. But one of the major learnings I had was that I needed more N95s and I wasn't able to get them. So what I'm doing is I've got my original supply of N95s and I am baking and recycling the heck out of these. But if we get to wave 2, if there's a resurgence in my particular community of the same virus or a strain of the virus that's worse, I will be retiring my recycled ones and entirely switching to brand new ones and then recycling these, because I think it's really important that you need to have decent airway protection. Now, I'm not getting into the anti-mask thing on this, but that's a really interesting one. If you are getting prepper advice on pandemic from preppers who have beards at this point in July 2020, don't. They really don't know what they're talking about. I know this infuriates those preppers out there that are maintaining beards, but there is things that are more important than vanity, and having an N95 that seals and fits to your face is way more important than face fungus. And I will be shaving tonight before I go to work. My other major learning was, and it goes on from the first one, which was the inadequate supply of PPE and the readiness of employers to switch to substandard equipment, is the fact that they're prepared to lie. Like, we are giving substandard surgical masks to patients and visitors in my hospital, but we're not telling them that. And we are doing the same thing with staff. I have noticed that the free staff 2 mask a day surgical masks, which are inadequate, they should have N95s in emergent ICU at least. That is actually now becoming those Chinese bright blue ones that aren't really that great. Better than nothing, but not great. So that's another thing that I didn't figure would happen until society was actually collapsing. Speaking of vanity, I stopped getting my hair cut, and this is my second pandemic haircut from Kitty. I think I might get her to hack again next week. One of the things, I'm a prepper, as I would like to be prepped, and we were. So Kitty had to order this from China early on. It's specific hair cutting scissors, and one of the other things is we don't have decent combs. So we didn't have the right scissors. Now, a lot of people out there are going on about vacuum attachments, or going on about crop cutting and zippers and all that sort of thing, clippers and all that sort of thing. I would point out to you that if your basic prep involves using electricity, you've got a single point of failure. For me, a pair of scissors is a great idea because I can sharpen them using a sharpening stone, of which I have quite a few, and if the electricity is out, it doesn't matter, I can still use it. So I think that's one of the things, that's one of my integral parts of my prepping has always been, don't assume grid's up, don't assume I can use replacement for power down. Now that's interesting because I'm going to be building I am in fact building a solar passive home, and that may or may not be ready in November of this year. I'm hoping November of this year, that we're going to retire into, that's in the middle of nowhere and is on its own artesian wells and all the rest of it. So it's actually really using electricity in a reusable format that, other than a major EMP in that particular area, is unlikely, but other than a major EMP, will mean that in grid down we'll actually have hot water, air conditioning, cooking and all the rest of it. So that's one of the interesting things, is that I still want to have redundancy based upon electric failure. I think that's a major hole in a lot of people's preps, is that they have big systems but they don't really have a small system that works if the big system fails. Scissors being an example of that. The other thing that's took me by surprise is masks. I really was quite surprised that in 2020 people have such low limited intellect that they can convince themselves that masks are more dangerous than not wearing a mask in an airborne droplet pandemic. I still find this absolutely stunning. I didn't realise just how dumb people are, and it's utterly amazing. And of course, the dumber they are, the more they're convinced that they're right, and the more evidence that they can find that China made this in a weapons lab and masks make it worse than having no mask. I mean, that conspiracy, level of conspiracy, was really disgusting to me early on. I thought it was just a few people, but it's actually a fairly large number of people. So yeah, I wasn't really expecting that. I expected most preppers would just hide and would shave and would have their own N95s and would be giving good advice online to people who aren't preppers about how to actually maintain social distancing, how to stretch pantry food stocks, how to do canning and stuff like that, and how to do gardening on a large scale. And some preppers have really done that very well, like Prepper Potpourri and Bred a Full Spectrum Survival. But others really went into crazy la-la land, and I think it just shows how mentally unbalanced they are anyway. And I think it's a really important thing that you look at your sources of information and support as we go through this pandemic, to actually look at the people and supports that were worth looking at and the people and supports that were not worth looking at. In the past, people have made instant judgments based on how beautiful the host is or how nice they talk, or indeed their politics. Like if you're for 2A, I watch every video you do and believe it all, but if you're against 2A, I won't watch any videos. For those people who aren't American, that's just some crazy thing. Anyway, the other issue, I expected two types of pandemic. I expected a vicious, nasty, crushing pandemic that would burn out in 2 to 4 months, or I expected a very low grade, slow moving pandemic that would last a few years. What I didn't expect was a crushing pandemic that's killing a large number of people, but not a huge large number of people, that's targeting more of the vulnerable than the non-vulnerable in population, and that probably will last a year or more. I didn't expect that. So what we've actually got, whether people admit this or not, is a very slow economic collapse scenario going on. At the same time, we have a large amount of people who get sick and get hospitalized, but it depends. It can go months and then spurk up in your community. So the threat's present all the time, but it's present in your local community to various degrees. The thing is that as a prepper, you need to be prepared and protected, even if there's very low incidence in your community, because after 4 months it can come back, after 2 months it can come back. And I think that's one of the interesting things with this disease. It's really atypical how it's working. It's almost like a beautiful sweet spot in terms of hitting us hard, but not hitting us hard enough for everybody to go, okay, we're in a world war. And we are in a world war with the pandemic. We usually are in these scenarios, and we definitely are in this one, but it's hitting so gently and so localized in places that people are able to deny it even exists, which is crazy, absolutely crazy. The other thing I didn't expect, and this is my bonus fifth, is I didn't expect society to start to fragment and arguments break out on non-related arguments. I expected it to be COVID pandemic focused, and what's happened is people are really going out of their way to find other things to worry about and also other things to demonstrate and fight against. Like people are gathering in large groups to pull down statues of white people. People are gathering in large groups to protest having to wear a mask. People are gathering in large groups to support president election. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know why people are doing that. I really don't. Anyway, I do thoroughly recommend these guys' channels, and it's really great to see it. And I'm going to go a little bit into what an after action report actually is, so you can understand what I'm talking about. And that'll be in my next video, which will be after the weekend because I'm working 3 nights. I'm going to shoot some video at work, and I'm going to get back together, getting videos up and running, waiting for my new PC to arrive once the iMac goes away. Have a great week. Love you all. Toodles.
Welcome to my channel, derealove Survival. You can just start up your fire like that.
Meow! This is a beautiful Marmalade Cat production, 2020.